It began like any other morning, until the ground moved. In just 47 seconds, Istanbul changed forever. Streets cracked, homes collapsed, thousands of lives broken. Some were sleeping, some were dreaming, some never woke up. This is the story of that day, of fear, of silence, of survival, of voices calling from the dust, and hands reaching through rubble, of the science that warned us, and the people who rose when the city fell. This is not just the story of an earthquake. It's the story of Istanbul, and the day the earth did not stay still. Chapter 1. It happened at 4:18. April 23rd, 2025. The day was not special. A normal Wednesday, spring in Istanbul. The sky was still dark. Birds had not begun to sing. People slept. Children dreamed. Some were awake, but not many. Then the ground moved. It started slow, like a hum, under the earth. Then it hit. Boom, shake, crash. A noise so loud it seemed to come from inside the body, a sound that felt like fear. The clock said 4:18 a.m. The city would never forget that number. Fatma lived in Kadıköy. She was a mother of 2. Her baby girl was only 7 months old. Fatma woke up when her bed moved. At first, she thought she was dreaming, but the mirror on the wall fell. It shattered. Then the lights flickered and went black. Her husband shouted, "Earthquake, get the kids!" She didn't think. She ran. The baby was crying. Her older son stood frozen in his room. Fatma grabbed them both. She didn't take shoes, not even a coat. They ran down the stairs. The building shook like paper in the wind. A loud noise, like metal breaking. Outside, people screamed. Dust filled the air. Someone shouted, "A wall fell!" Someone's under. Fatma held her children tight. Her legs were shaking, but she was safe. For now. In a tall building near Beşiktaş, a university student named Dennis was studying late. She had an exam in 2 days. She stayed up too long. She had just fallen asleep. Then the quake threw her from the bed. Books flew from the shelf. Her laptop smashed. The walls cracked. The air was thick with dust. Denise tried to reach the door, but part of the ceiling fell. The hallway was gone. She was trapped. She called out, "Help! Is anyone there?" Silence. Then a voice. "I'm here," someone said. A boy from another room. He was alive too. They could not see each other, but they were not alone. In another part of the city, Yusuf put on his rescue uniform. He was a firefighter. He had trained for this. But this was different. This was real. He got into the truck. His team moved fast. No time to think. Just go. The radio said many buildings were down. They went to the closest one. It was a school. The roof had fallen in. People were crying outside. Some looked for children. Then, a sound. Tap, tap, tap. A signal. Someone was inside. Yusuf got on his knees. "We hear you," he said. "Hold on." They started digging. Carefully, slowly, with hands and tools. A hand appeared. A child's hand. Alive. Across Istanbul, the power was gone. Phones didn't work. Gas lines broke. Fires started in some areas. People stood in the streets, barefoot, crying, praying. Some searched for family. Others just stared, shocked and silent. A man carried his father on his back. A woman gave water to a stranger. One little girl asked, "Is the world broken?" No one had the answer. By sunrise, Istanbul had changed. Over 4,000 buildings were down. Bridges were cracked. Hospitals were full. And still, the ground shook. Small aftershocks came every few minutes. Fear stayed. And the question rose again and again. Is this the big one? The sun came up. Smoke and dust covered the sky. But so did something else. Hands holding hands, neighbors helping neighbors, people sharing bread, blankets, hope. In just 47 seconds. The earth had changed Istanbul, but the people were still standing. Together. Chapter 2. Voices in the dust. The shaking stopped, but the fear stayed. Dust filled the air. Gray, thick, hard to see, hard to breathe. And then, from the broken buildings, came voices, weak, software, calling out. Help! Is anyone there? I'm here. Fatma stood in the street, holding her children, barefoot. She looked around, cried out, Ali! Ali! Her husband, gone. He ran back inside to help their neighbor. The building had fallen, a pile of bricks, glass, wood. Silence. She shouted again, Ali! Then, a sound. A small knock. From deep inside. She dropped her baby into her neighbor's arms and fell to her knees. Ali? Is that you? A voice came. I'm here. Tears filled her eyes. He was alive. In the dark, Dennis lay still. One leg was trapped under a heavy piece of wood. She couldn't move. Dust was in her nose, her mouth, her ears. It was hard to breathe. The boy's voice was still nearby. He said his name was Emre. He had a broken arm. He couldn't move either, but they kept talking. To stay awake, to stay alive. "Are you scared?" she asked. "Yes," he said, "but we're not alone." That helped her. Just a little. Yusuf's hands were bleeding. He had been digging for hours. No rest, no food, no water. His team was quiet, focused. Every move could save a life or end one. Then a sound, a voice. Faint. "Baba?" A child's voice. Everyone stopped. They listened. "Yes, we're here," Yusuf shouted. They moved faster, but careful. Always careful. Then a small hand, covered in dirt, reaching up. A boy, maybe 6 years old, alive. Yusuf carried him out, wrapped him in his own jacket. The boy whispered, "Where's my dad?" No one had the answer. In a different part of the city, a woman dug with her hands. Her name was Layla. Her daughter, Zeynep, was inside. Layla had been outside when the quake hit. Zeynep was sleeping in their apartment. Now, it was just rubble. Still, Layla dug. She screamed her daughter's name, over and over. Her hands bled. Her voice cracked. Then, a sound. A cough. "Zeynep?" "Yes," came a whisper. Layla laughed and cried at the same time. Help arrived 10 minutes later. They pulled Zeynep out, alive. Layla held her like a miracle because she was. In the hours after the quake, hundreds of voices rose from the dust, some loud, some soft, some stopped too soon. But many were found, pulled out by strangers, by mothers, fathers, friends, firefighters. Some waited hours, some waited days. Many survived, some did not. And still the ground shook. Small aftershocks came every few minutes, sometimes big enough to knock people down. Still, the digging continued. Still, the voices called. Still, the rescuers answered, because behind every cry was a person, a story, a life. Chapter 3. The City That Stood Still. When the shaking stopped, Istanbul did not move. Not right away. The city was still. Quiet. Like someone had pressed pause on everything. No cars, no music, no lights, just silence. The streets were full of dust, gray dust, white dust. It came from broken buildings, from shattered lives. People walked slowly, some barefoot, some in pajamas, eyes wide, faces white with shock. They didn't speak. Not yet. They just looked around at what used to be and what was now gone. Phones didn't work. No signal, no Wi-Fi, no way to call for help. People held their phones high, searching for bars. Some cried when they couldn't reach family. The power was out. No lights, no elevators, no hot water. Gas lines broke. Fires started in some places. Smoke rose into the sky. Still, the city stayed quiet. Not peaceful. Just stunned. In some places, people gathered in parks. They were afraid to stay indoors. Aftershocks came every few minutes. The ground trembled. People held hands, closed their eyes, prayed. A man whispered, "Please, no more." At a small square in Fatih, an old woman fell to the ground. Her knee was bleeding. She was shaking with fear. A teenage boy saw her. He didn't know her, but he ran to help. He gave her water, covered her with his jacket. He said nothing, just stayed beside her. A stranger, becoming family. For that moment. Near the sea, a cafe owner opened his doors. His shop was broken, tables upside down, but he still made tea. Gas stove, small cups, one pot. He served everyone for free. Old men, children, foreigners, rescue workers. "No money," he said, "not today." And people cried, because kindness feels big when the world feels broken. In a schoolyard, a woman gave out bread. Her house was gone, but she still shared what she had, one piece at a time, to anyone who was hungry. Her hands were shaking, her eyes red, but she smiled, a weak smile. Still, it was real. In another part of the city, a man played music, a soft melody from a small radio, batteries only. It wasn't loud, but people gathered around. They listened. And for a few minutes, they felt something like hope. The city didn't sleep that night. People sat outside, in cars, on sidewalks. They were cold, tired, afraid. They told stories, where they were when the shaking started, what they saw, who they were with, who they were still looking for. And they listened. Because sometimes listening is everything. By morning, Istanbul was still standing. But not the same. It was slower, quieter, softer, like it had taken a deep breath and didn't know when to let it out. But through the silence, there was movement, small, human, kind. A hand reaching out, a voice saying, "Are you okay?" A blanket, a smile, a glass of water. Strangers helping strangers, even while the ground still moved, even while the fear still sat in their chests, because sometimes even the quietest city can show the loudest heart. Chapter 4. The Science of Shaking Ground. Why did the ground shake? Why did so many buildings fall? Why, on that day? These are the questions people asked. Some asked with anger, some with fear, some with tears in their eyes. And scientists, they had answers. But not all the answers. Turkey is a land of beauty. Mountains, rivers, sea. But under the ground, something else lives. Something powerful. Something dangerous. Fault lines. A fault line is a deep crack in the earth. The ground on one side moves. So does the other. Sometimes they push. Sometimes they slide. Sometimes they get stuck. And when the pressure builds, boom, an earthquake. The most famous fault in Turkey is called the North Anatolian Fault. It is long, over 1,500 kilometers. It runs from the east all the way to the sea near Istanbul. It is one of the most active faults in the world. It has moved many times before, and it will move again. Scientists have studied it for years. They said, a big quake is coming. Soon, maybe near Istanbul. But people didn't listen. Or maybe they just didn't believe it would happen to them. In 1999, the ground shook near the city of Izmit. It happened at night, just like Istanbul. Over 17,000 people died. Thousands more were injured. Many buildings were destroyed. That earthquake was a warning. Scientists said the fault was moving west, toward Istanbul. They called it the domino effect. One quake, then another, and another, getting closer each time. They said, Istanbul is next. So why weren't we ready? Some say, it's because of time. Time makes people forget. Life goes on. People work, go to school, get married. They don't think about shaking ground until it shakes again. Others say, it's the buildings. Many buildings in Istanbul were old, built fast, built cheap, not strong enough for earthquakes. Some were repaired, some were not. Some people knew. Some didn't want to know. But science always knew. The earth is not quiet forever. And there's more. Istanbul sits near the Marmara Sea. Under the sea, the fault continues, silent, hidden, waiting. Some scientists say a big earthquake may still come, even bigger than this one. They call it the big one. It could come in 5 years, or 50. No one knows, but they agree it will come. So, what can we do? We can build stronger homes. We can train for disaster. We can listen to science. We can prepare. Because when the earth speaks, we must be ready to listen. The earthquake on April 23rd, 2025. It was not a surprise. It was a warning and a reminder. The ground beneath us is always moving. We just don't feel it. Until we do. Chapter 5. The Eyes of the World. The earth shook for less than a minute, but in that short time, everything changed. And not just in Istanbul. All around the world, people heard, people watched, people asked, what is happening in Turkey? News spread fast, before the dust had even settled. The first photos were online. Broken buildings, fires, mothers holding their children, men crying in the streets. One video showed a rescue worker pulling a baby from the rubble. The world saw it. Millions shared it. Some cried. Others whispered, "Not again." In the first hours, no one knew how bad it was. How many are dead? Are there more coming? Is Istanbul safe? The answers came slowly. Too slowly for some. People wanted facts, but even the government didn't know everything. The president made a speech. His face was serious. His voice was calm, but his eyes were tired. He said, "We are doing everything we can. Rescue teams are working. Shelters are open. We will not leave anyone behind." But some people were angry. They shouted on social media, "Too slow. Too late. Where is the help?" At the same time, help was coming. From everywhere. From every corner of Turkey. People brought food, blankets, medicine. From around the world, planes arrived with doctors, rescue dogs, tools. One man came from Italy. He was a firefighter. He said, "I came because I remember the 1999 quake. We are brothers now." From Greece, from Germany, from Qatar, teams arrived to dig, to heal, to help. Even old enemies became friends for a moment, because pain has no border. The media watched every move. TV cameras followed rescue teams. Journalists asked hard questions. Why weren't more buildings earthquake safe? Where is the emergency plan? Why did this happen? Again. Some politicians gave answers. Others stayed quiet. A few blamed each other. Some blamed the past. But for the people in the streets, blame didn't matter. They wanted action. They wanted safety. They wanted truth. One reporter stood in the middle of a broken street. She looked into the camera and said, "This is not just a story. These are real people. This is not just about buildings. This is about trust, about care, about how a city holds itself together or falls apart." Her voice shook, and people listened. Social media became a lifeline. People posted pictures of missing loved ones, shared locations of open shelters, offered rides, food, power banks. Some told their stories in short videos. Others just posted one word, alive. And still, the world watched for days, for nights, for every rescue, every tear. Messages came from across the globe. We stand with you. You are not alone. Stay strong, Istanbul. The Eiffel Tower turned off its lights. A soccer team in Spain wore black armbands. Children in Japan sent drawings of hearts and stars and hope, because even from far away, people felt the heartbreak and wanted to help it heal. The eyes of the world were watching, and Istanbul was not alone. Chapter 6. After the Silence. The ground stopped shaking. The dust began to settle. The sirens grew quiet, and a strange silence covered the city. Not peace, not calm. It was the silence of loss. In that silence, people began to count. Not buildings, people, families, friends, loved ones who were gone. Some cried, some prayed, some just sat in the middle of the street, holding a photo. One woman said, "I lost my home. But worse, I lost the hands that built it." The rescue teams stayed for days. Some found life. Some found only silence. They worked in the rain, in the dark, with no sleep. And when it was over, they cried too. Not just for the ones they could not save, but for the ones they did. Because every life pulled from the rubble was a reminder of how close death had come. There were funerals in parks, funerals in mosques, funerals with no names. Some people had no one left to bury them, and others had no one left to bury with. Then, slowly, the city began to move again. Not fast, not loud, step by step. Shops opened, schools schools reopened in tents. Children played with broken toys, not because they forgot, but because life must go on. People helped each other rebuild. Men carried bricks. Women cooked for neighbors. Teens cleaned parks and streets. One boy, just 10 years old, said, "My father is gone, but I still want to help." The government promised new laws, stronger buildings, better planning, faster rescue teams. Some believed it, some didn't, but everyone agreed. This must not happen again. Scientists came back on the news. They said, "Yes, the danger is still there. Yes, we must prepare. Yes, we can be ready next time." People listened, and this time, more of them believed. In the weeks after, the city changed. Not just the buildings, the people. They spoke more kindly, walked more slowly, held hands longer. There was sadness, but also strength. A quiet kind of strength. The kind that says, "We are still here." A writer in Istanbul said, "This city has always lived near danger, but we do not live in fear. We live in love, in courage, in memory." Now, it's April again, 1 year later. The sun rises over the Bosphorus. Children fly kites. Old men drink tea. Couples sit on benches near the sea. Life is still life, but some things are different now. People look up at tall buildings and ask, "Is it safe?" They check emergency kits. They talk to their children about earthquakes. They prepare. Not because they are afraid, but because they are stronger. And every April 23rd, at 4:18 a.m., the city stops for 1 minute. No talking, no music, no movement, just silence, to remember, to grieve, to honor, and then to go forward. Istanbul remembers, and Istanbul rises again and again and again.